Hello, Math 050 students. So today we're going to be working on section 9.4 in your book. And it's about equations of the lines. And so I'm going to work a few problems and talk to you about what's going on so that you won't have any trouble understanding what an equation of the line is, and also how to do the homework. So we're going to start with a really basic equation of the line. So this isn't an equation of the line yet because we need to substitute something for the m and something for the b. But this particular equation is in slope-intercept form. That's what we call it, slope-intercept form. It's y equals mx plus b. The m is equal to the slope, and the b is equal to the y-intercept. So what we're going to be doing today is kind of changing the equation around. I like to call it manipulating the equation so that we can find the slope and we can find the y-intercept when it isn't in this form. So we rearrange things so that we get it into that form. So first we're going to start with an equation that's actually in slope-intercept form. So y is equal to 2x plus 3. So you can see the y is all by itself, just like it is in the equation. The 2 that's in front of the x is the m. So whatever the number is right in front of the x, that's going to be slope. And we call that m. So the m in this case is equal to 2. Okay. Oh, can you see that? I don't want to be writing if you can't see it. Okay, then the 3 is in the place of the b. So the b is equal to the y-intercept, and so we would say the point would be 0, 3. So if you were graphing that, you would start with 0, 3, and then you would use your slope to find more points. Okay, all right. So let's look at number 2 on your worksheet. So in number 2, you've got y is equal to a negative 27.4x. So when you get an equation like this, and you're asked to find the slope and the y-intercept, you probably notice right away, whoa, there's no b. There's nothing there. When there's nothing written for b, that means b has got to be 0. So the point would be 0, 0. So the slope is a negative 27.4. So we'd say m is equal to a negative 27.4. And then that's all you would need to do in that case. Okay? All right, so let's see if we can find slope and the y-intercept in number 3. So for number 3, we have a negative 2x minus 8y, and that's equal to 16. This equation isn't in slope-intercept form at all, because remember, slope-intercept form is y is equal to mx plus b. So what we need to do is we need to rearrange it so that we have the y all by itself. So I'm going to start by adding the 2x, and so when I do that, I put it on the other side of the equation. So I've got 2x now plus 16 on the right. On the left, I've got a negative 8y. Then I'm going to divide by a negative 8 to get rid of it in front of the y. And I do that with all the parts. So a negative 8 divided by a negative 8 cancels out so that we've got a y. 2 over a negative 8 could be reduced if I divided both of those by 2. The slope is negative 1/4, and then we have the x. 16 divided by 8 would be 2. 16 divided by a negative is a negative, so it's actually a negative 2. And so you see that you have your slope of 1/4, actually a negative 1/4. There we go. Negative 1/4. And then the b, which is the y-intercept, that point would be 0, -2. Okay. All right. So let's look at number 4 on your sheet. Okay, so this particular equation really seems like, wow, it's missing stuff. We've got y is equal to 28. So remember, y is equal to mx plus b. Because there's not a variable next to the 28, we know that the 28 does not represent slope, because if it was, it would have to have an x there. So it's the b. It's out here all by itself. It's a constant. And so when this is written like this is telling you that slope must have been 0. So if slope was 0, and then it was multiplied by the x, you'd get 0 times x, which would be 0. And then that 28 would have to be the y-intercept. So if this could have been the original equation, and it's simplified by 0 times x, gives you y is equal to 28. Okay, so if you had to find the slope, you would just say, okay, m is equal to 0. Then the y-intercept, which is the b, is equal to 28. All right, so on your next set of questions, it says find an equation of a line with the slope and with the y-intercept. So you're given, let's say, so this is number 5, you're given a slope and you're given a y-intercept. So for number 5, it says the slope is equal to 23 and the y-intercept is 0, 13. And now we need to write an equation of the line. So we would write our y is equal to, the slope is 23, then we write our x, the y-intercept, all we need to write is the 13, so we write plus 13, and so now you have your equation of the line. Y is equal to 23x plus 13. Okay, let's look at number 6. So number 6, we've got a slope of 6/5, and we have a y-intercept I should just put b there because that's so sloppy. Put b. So you know b represents the y-intercept. So slope is 6/5 and the y-intercept is 0, 0. Okay. So in this case, we would go ahead and write our y. We'd write the slope as 6/5 and we write our x. But there's no reason to write 0, 0. If nothing is there, then you know, oh, the slope is 0. Okay. Every time I say okay in these videos, what I'm really saying is, are there any questions? But you can't answer me, so I say okay instead. All right, just one of my little quirks. Number 7. Okay, so number 7, the directions say, find an equation of the line containing the given point and having the given slope. So we've got a point of 2, 5. This is definitely not the y-intercept, is it? Because it would have to have a 0 here to be the y-intercept. And then the slope is equal to 5. So this is just some point that happens to be on the equation of the line, but it is not the y-intercept. So what we need to solve is, we need to find out what is b, which is of course the y-intercept, in order to have the equation of the line. So what we do is this. We know 2 represents an x, and we know y represents a 5, right? And so we're going to substitute this in the equation y is equal to mx plus b. And we're also going to substitute the m for the slope that we know. So we plug in a 5 for the y. The slope was also 5. The x is the 2, so it's going to be times 2, and then plus b. Okay? Let me go over that again. So we were given a point, which is not the y-intercept. So we're going to use the coordinates that we have, the x and the y, and we're going to substitute those into the equation. And so for the x, we have the 2. For the y, we have a 5. And we also have the slope, which is also 5. So now we're just going to solve for b, and then we can write an equation of the line. So 5 times 2 is 10. So 5 is equal to 10 plus b. We want to get that b all by itself, so we're going to take away 10. So we get a negative 5 is equal to b. Now that we know that b is a negative 5, we can go ahead and write our equation. So y is equal to, remember our slope was 5, and we have an x next to it, minus the y-intercept, which would be a negative 5. Okay, I forgot which one that was. Okay, then number 8. That's where we are. We're on number 8. So for number 8, we've got a point, which is a negative 2, negative 4. And then we have a slope of 0. Okay. We're not given the y-intercept, so we are solving to find the y-intercept. So we know that this is a coordinate of a point, which is an x, and this is a coordinate of a point, which is a y. So in the equation y is equal to mx plus b, we're going to go ahead and put what we know in this equation and then solve for b. So instead of a y, we have a negative 4. Instead of an x, we have a negative 2. And then we also have the slope of 0, and then plus b. So all we did was some substitution. So we would start with 0 times a negative 2, which is 0, and then 0 plus b, which of course is b. So b is equal to a negative 4. So now we'll write our equation of the line. So we would have, can you see this bar down? Y is equal to, remember that slope was 0? And so 0 times x would just give us 0. So there's no reason to write that. We simplify so we can get rid of that. B is a negative 4, so we have y is equal to a negative 4. This is a really good one also to explain to you that when you have really short equations like that, not to be saying, I have no idea what that means, there's no slope, there's no x. So if there is no slope, that just means the slope is 0. But we do have a y-intercept of a negative 4. Okay. So to graph that, you would use a 0 slope with a negative 4, which means you're going to be graphing a horizontal line. All right. So that was number 8. So let's look at number 9. So 9 also asks for you to find an equation of the line, and they give you 2 points. They give you a negative 6 and 1, and then they give us 2, 3. So they're not even giving us slope. So we have no parts. We have no parts of that equation, do we? And so we are going to have to find the m, and we're going to have to find the b in order to write an equation of the line. So we're going to start by finding the slope, because we know we can use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So x and y, x and y. So if this is 0.2 and this is 0.1, we would say 3, take away 1, over 2, take away a negative 6. 3 take away 1 is 2. 2 take away a negative 6 would be 8. And we can reduce that to 1/4. So now we have our m. Yay, we have our slope. M is equal to a positive 1/4. Okay, so knowing that, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. And I'm going to erase this. You can always go back. You can always rewind if you wanted to see that part again. All right, now, we have 2 y's and we have 2 x's, but we don't need 2 of them. We just need 1. So this is where you're going to pick a point. You can either pick this one or this one to use for the substitution into the equation. Just because this one's right in front of me, that's what I'm going to use. And so for the y, I'll write 1 is equal to, remember the slope is 1/4. The x then is going to be a negative 6, so that'll be times the negative 6. And then we're solving for b, so I put plus b at the end. So I start by multiplying 1/4 by a negative 6, and I get a negative 6/4. It might be easier just to reduce this before I go any further. And so if I divide both of those by 2, I would get a negative 3/2. So I'm not really changing anything, I'm just making it smaller, and it seems like smaller things are easier to work with, smaller numbers. All right, so to continue solving this, I'm going to add the 3/2. And when I do that, I have to remember that this 3/2 is equal to 1.5. I could also just change this 1 to halves, so I think I'll do that. 1 is equal to how many 2's? So to do that, I would just say 2 times 1, which is 2. So 1 is equal to 2/2. Okay, so instead of saying 1, I'm saying 2/2. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So 5/2 is equal to b. Okay, so now I go back and I remember, what was our slope? Oh yeah, that's right, it was 1/4. And so I write y is equal to 1/4 x plus the y-intercept of 5/2. All right, so now let's look at number 10. So number 10 on your paper, they also want you to give an equation of the line, and they are giving you 2 points. So our 2 points are a negative 2 and a negative 4, and 2, negative 1. So again, we're missing the slope. We are also missing the y-intercept. So we don't have the slope, we don't have the y-intercept, and we need both of those in order to have an equation of the line. So we'll go ahead and use our slope formula, which remember is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is an x, this is a y, this is an x, this is a y. So we have a negative 1 minus a negative 4 over 2 minus a negative 2. So a negative 1 minus a negative 4 would be a positive 3. 2 minus a negative 2 is going to be a positive 4. So our slope is 3/4. So now we need to choose one of these 2 points, and we're going to use the point to help us solve the rest of the equation so that we get y is equal to mx plus b. So we have to solve for the b. So I'm just going to use this one because it's right in front of me. So instead of writing the y, I write a -4, and that's equal to, the slope was 3/4. The x is a -2, so this is times a -2, and then plus b. So again, we're solving for b. We start by multiplying. So 3 times a -2 is a -6. 4 times 1 is just 4. 6/4 can be reduced, and it's just, I think, easier to work with if it's a smaller number. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce it to 3/2. I just divided both of those by 2 to do that. Okay, so I need to add 3/2 to the -4. I'm going to make this have a denominator of 2, so I'm just going to do this over to the side. So a -4/1 would equal to how many 2's? Okay, so you just multiply this denominator by the -4, and you get a -8. So instead of the -4, I'm going to write a -1/2, or I'm sorry, a -8/2, so a -8/2. Okay, so to get rid of this, I added 3/2, so I have to add the 3/2 on the other side. So a -8 plus the 3/2 is a -5/2, and so that's equal to b. So when I rewrite my equation, I write y is equal to, our slope, I think, was 3/4. Let's see if I'm right. Yep, it was 3/4. Remember when we found that? So y is equal to 3/4 x plus our b is equal to a -5/2. So instead of writing a plus, let's write -5/2. Okay. I guess that was the last one of those. And it has been about 22 minutes. I'm trying to make these a little bit shorter for you so I don't lose you. So if you do have some questions, go ahead and either text me or call me. And the next video that we'll be doing, I think, is going to be 9.5. I don't know. You're just going to have to look. I'm not sure. All right. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.